I am actually going to talk about JavaScript internationalization. There's not a ton that people are doing on the server side right now because a lot of that's been figured out. A lot of the libraries, well, every library that I'm going to be talking about works in both places. So feel free to use any of these modules or whatever in Node. So JavaScript internationalization, generally manifesting itself as a web app that you're using. So yeah, that's all. So about me, or about this talk, I'm not actually that great of a speaker, but I talk a lot about beautiful language, and so that's kind of a cool dichotomy. Also, people think that I can speak multiple languages because I talk about translations, and I think that's German for I don't speak other languages. So I like to say that this is a problem, that it's a data problem, it's a presentation, it's a template problem. Like it's not a language necessarily problem. You have to understand the restrictions and the things that you're set out to solve, and you can solve it without knowing a bunch of languages. It helps to know people who know multiple languages, though. It's quite helpful. So this is less about internationalization, specifically, and more about user experience, because really what you're trying to do is give users the best chance to understand what the heck you're trying to get them to do. But that, in this case, turns out to be good internationalization. So what we're talking about when we talk about messages and we talk about internationalization, I'm going to talk a lot about the message side of things for now. There's things like right to left and quite a few things in internationalization, but a lot of the pain that we struggle from these days is in message formatting and message displaying. So you might not think that it comes up much, or you might think that it's the same as translating like a paragraph or something, but it's not. So anytime you're mixing data and a phrase, much like you mix data and a template, and out comes the actual markup for a page. That's what we're talking about with messages. So you want to consider problems like there are 5 results, or there are 3 new messages, or welcome so and so, come see Y. Your score is X, or you need X more points to continue. Things like that are the types of sentences that are actually incredibly difficult to write in a way that work in every language, as much as you wouldn't think so. Things about me is I like to build JavaScript programs. My mom was an English teacher, so there's some background. Those are my stats. I started out a blog post called The UX of Language with this tweet, and I really like it as kind of a base for talking about this kind of stuff. It's kind of, you can tell I favorited it, and it says, web programming is the science of coming up with increasingly complicated ways of concatenating strings. That's kind of beautiful, but that's really what we're talking about. And really, like, in the end of the day, if you take about the JavaScript, like, what you see is just a bunch of concatenated strings. So thanks, Greg Brockman, for setting me up. So I'm going to give you a brief history of string concat. 1986, web was for documents. So it's static text files ruled the web. Obviously, no one was running iterm2, so that is not the best screenshot. But either way, there were documents, right? And translation was a translation of documents. It was no different than translation had been in the past. Some time passes, the montage video, if you will, and people desire to customize content. And this is a huge shift in the web, right? It stopped being like, look at this, look at this, look at this, and it became like, here's something for you. And so this was the era of literally just outputting concatenated strings. So if you remember like CGI bin, Perl, that kind of stuff, like, yeah, line endings inside the print statement is awesome. So I think this is like the original Google app. So then after that, crappy templates came around. You might recognize a language called personal homepage, or PHP hypertext preprocessor, however many levels deep you want to go. And it really was a template language. Like, they wrote it as a template language, and then just grew and grew and grew and grew. And then later, it became like of actual language, kind of. JSP and ASP are similar examples of this, just like write your app and your code all in the same line. So I used to write these sweet PHP apps. So it was just like the top had like database access, and then it had like the doc type, and then it had some logic for like if it was a login screen, return, and it was awesome. It was good. It was good days. So I call that the nearly 10 years of string concatenation dark ages. And then around 2004, you started seeing, I mean before you saw it, but it really became popular with some of the major MVC server-side frameworks, Rails and Django and that kind of stuff, Spring, if you will. So logicless templates came into popularity. They're not necessary, but they became like a good way to really, really decouple apps and HTML. So like 20-something years later, we can finally render HTML all right. So what about rendering a sentence? How is it different? So a templated sentence. So this is Handlebar's template. I tend to like those. So this seems good. Welcome to the site, so-and-so, Alex. So we'll try another one. Hi, Alex. You have blank new messages. Seems good, but it's not good. Because there's a case, especially even in English, right? So it's, hi, Alex, you have 1 new messages. And that's bad. That's gross, I believe I said. So this is why this talk is considered the UX of language. We want to avoid situations like that. And it gets much, much worse whenever you start going into other languages that I don't speak. So our traditional way of concatenating strings together isn't sufficient when those strings form a coherent sentence. So this is like a rhetorical question, but this is something that I used to do and I still find myself doing. Is like when I make my template, I make sure that even when the template runs, like all the brackets line up nicely in like the indented way, right? Like so I spend time doing that, and then I don't actually have good sentences on my site. So this is the sentence we were talking about earlier. You have 2 new messages. So this is some of the ways that we solve this now, kind of. This is our solutions. These are our solutions, English. So the first one's just ugly. It works in English. It doesn't work in every language. If you have more than one additional way to pluralize something, you'd have to have like some or operators in there. It gets bad. And the second one's considered prefix and postfix. Sometimes it works, but other times it's still just, it's not very personable. If you consider something like Facebook's application where they say like Alex Sexton and 3 others like this product, that would be really bad if it was like people who like this product other than Alex Sexton 3. So plural branching is really what we want to end up doing. So let's write some code to figure out when we want to branch on the 2 different strings. So in this case, you have in English, right? You say if it's 1, you have 1 new message, and you have 2 new messages, right? And so in Spanish, if you're trying to internationalize your app, you have a branch, and you say, okay, now I'll do this this message in Spanish and this message in English, and that's cool. But this is really gross. It's directly coupled inside your app code. And that gets really big because here are like some commonly supported languages, and not all of them just have 2 pluralization forms. I think I was feeling sorry. So a lot of people immediately say, all right, Alex, like I understand this is bad. I've internationalized an app before. We use getText in our Python app, or we use getText here. And I'll get back to that. That's the Stallman picture. That's a good comic. But I'll get back to that, so hold your horses. So navigating the message landscape. So I'll just go into like some of the ways people are solving this. Properties files is something that often comes up. They're usually just for internationalization. They're not necessarily for actually like plural forms and things like that, or gender specificity. Sometimes I'll ask someone, I like this metaphor someone a friend of mine gave me. Is like, I'll ask someone, do you support international strings in your application? And they'll say, yeah, we have properties files, which is the same as saying, is this TV high definition? And someone saying, yes, it has pixels. I mean, it's not a no. It's just not a yes either, right? So it's essentially a set of key values pairs. In this case, these properties files are some objects that I have, and it's good. I forgot how good at Spanish I was. So this is all it is. And then whenever you write your application, it just sticks those strings in. So this is pretty common. You'll see it in Java, Rails, Django has this kind of stuff. Pretty much everybody who's doing translations, you're kind of writing all your messages in this file. You send those off to translators. They send them back, and you switch them out. So it doesn't really address any of the hard problems with rendering different strings for different locales, other than it renders one string for every different locale. It's not really what we're looking for. So a lot of times people add sprintf, so they'll add one level of indirection, and they'll put the %d and they'll say a number goes here. You have blank messages, right? So that's the same case we had before, where you have one messages again, but it's better than nothing. So you can have data in there again, but you still have old problems. But our templates suck now because you have to like sprintf everything inside of them. So we can switch out messages and we can interpolate data into them, kind of like a template. But they're incorrectly pluralized and devoid of gender and context. That's bad. So authoring templates also starts to suck because you have all this HTML and you have no context of what you're even talking about. You just have these keys back to properties files, and everything doesn't look like what you expect it to look like. So we'll go back to Stallman, and getText starts to solve some of this stuff. PO files are the form of data exchange that they use. There's like the Mozilla Poodle project for translating, and that's POOT, right? So it's for PO file. It's getText. I'm sorry. So it decouples the data message, which is really what we want to do. So they got a few things really right in getText. This is like a JSON version of maybe what a PO file would look like in JSON. You give it a locale, you give it a plural form. And so this is really important. You say, I'm defining my indexes for my strings in this plural form. And so in English, or ENUS up here, my plural form is if it's 1, return a 0, and if it's 2, return 1, or if it's anything else, return 1. In which case, you'll grab that index out of that key. So if you notice, those indexes match up to the correct string there, and then you'll run sprintf on it, and that's a pretty good solution. There's different plural form functions. It's kind of a C API because it was written like in 1970 something. This is the English plural form. Spanish plural form looks exactly the same. French is a little different. 0 is kind of like more like none. It's translated along with 1, so that's a singular form kind of. Slovenian's crazy. I like this one because you have like mod 100 in there at all, and I guess that's the closest thing I can think of to that is like in English we have first, second, third, and then it's fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and then when you get to like 21st, 22nd, 23rd, it does it again, right? And so Slovenian, like that's just the way they pluralize everything. Welsh really sucks too as far as how many different keywords they have. So messages as keys is another interesting thing that a lot of people will do at getText. So you stick your whole message in there, and you have both. You have your default set in there directly, and so in this case, you can see all your possible messages kind of in line in there, and then they're used as the keys themselves. So then they go back through the getText stuff, and they can be switched out. So you can kind of see what will eventually be in there, but also you can still have properties files or PO files in this case. A lot of people will fuzzy match these, so you can like switch out a comma without screwing everything up, but it's harder in client-side JavaScript to fuzzy match things. There's quite a few features that we can do. We can kind of hack gender onto the top, but really what I want to get to is you still can't do things like concatenate two separately translated strings together. That never works. So I like my red shirt can never work because like languages will switch things around. So because you're implying an order by doing string concatenation, you can never do string concatenation. You have to always completely translate a full sentence together. So that's important. So with getText, we can pluralize messages. We can interpolate messages. And we can pluralize our message correctly for each locale. So we now have that capacity. We can kind of have templates with the messages inside of them. Good enough, maybe. We can use gender-specific words if we use context for gender. And it does a pretty good job at most of the things that we need. So getText is used in most Linux projects, and like tons and tons of apps use getText. And so it's a pretty good solution. So this is kind of some of the reasons why you might use it. So I wrote Jed, and I'll probably change the name soon. I'll let you know why. Jed is the MC of the other track. Up until a few months ago, he was a translator. That was his full-time job, and he was just a hobbyist JavaScripter that just happened to be better at it than everyone else. I guess when you have a hobby, it's easier to have fun. I don't know. He's just good. So I named it after him because you don't come across 3-character names that often that work. So I added kind of a chainable API for it if you want, but you can also use the old gross C APIs. And that was cool. So why am I not going to recommend it? So if we go back to English, I can give you a new sentence, a new hard one. Not too complex. There are 3 messages from 2 people. And so remember, you have to translate these all together. And that's bad because getText can only do 1 plural. So the plural form can take a single input. Also, I guess another problem is if you have context, like you have a menu and you have a footer, you want to use that for your context, not genders. So you can only go 1 level deep on any of their features. You can pluralize 1 thing and you can have 1 context. C API is gross. You can fix that. Yeah. You also have to repeat plural forms. You can get around some of this. Really, there's quite a bit wrong. So Norbert Lindberg told me about ICU message format whenever I put that out. They actually kind of crapped all over it, and I was pretty disappointed. But they pointed me towards ICU message format. And really, that's just plural format plus select format. IBM, I think, kind of runs most of ICU, and they specify things like internationalization standards and things like that. There's 6 keywords that map to different numbers in every language, different pluralizations, and then they'll define plural functions that map to those words. This is the syntax for message format, so it's pretty small. And so I wrote an implementation of message format in JavaScript. And so you can see here, I can switch these out. I'm probably too short on time to do this very often, but I'll do one. You can do that, and then it changes it to 2 messages. So it's a grammar for describing internationalization and message situations, right? You can have literals that happen before the message format things, and those just get sent in. If you don't need multiple languages, it doesn't matter. You still need to do this in English, right? So this is still a very hard task to do in English because it's 5 results in 2 categories, or 1 result in 2 categories, or 5 results in 1 category. That gets excessively difficult. And then you add gender, and it's he or she received 5 results, or 1 result, or 1 category, or 2 categories, and it just explodes. In that same case, you can do multiple plurals just in the same sentence. It's just 2 separate message format parts in the sentence. And then you can nest them, or you can do select format for gender, and you can get he found 5 results in 2 categories. And I can change any of those, and it'll automatically output the correct string. You have named arguments, so this is just replacements and things like that. You can add plugins. This one's highly readable. what this will do is output every form of Alex added himself and one other person to his group. It's using an offset plugin to say Alex is included in the totals, but he's not included in the other person in this group. So that's why the plural amount of people is 2, but it's just one person that's there. So you have complex plugins to do strings like this. And this is like straight out of Google's homepage or Facebook's, Google+, all this stuff. The only couple of apps that have decent, complex translations. It's translator friendly in the sense that everything's translated together. You don't have to translate one sentence that's directly related to another sentence completely separately from each other. But it's not translator friendly in that you have to be a programmer to understand the syntax at all. So that's message format.js. It's compilable, so it takes the input, precompile it out to a raw JavaScript function. It uses a parser expression grammar, a lot like Isla did this morning. Generates an AST and then spits out JavaScript that doesn't even require the original library. So it integrates directly into handlebars. You can write your messages directly in there. It'll pull all those out, compile them. It compiles them just like a template. So a little short on time, but I just want to talk about what the next steps are. Tooling is really what's up next. So how do we get to use these complex, good solutions for translations and then actually get our things translated? JavaScript internationalization is still in the dark ages. So it's totally possible to write good tools around these new formats. And so that's why I'm open sourcing the JED toolkit, which is a whole family of internationalization tools, both libraries and like actual web apps and APIs that you can set up in a stack to help translators and do all this stuff. So it's tools and libraries. I want developers to be happy. I want to kill like the 2-month code freeze for the translation time. I want to automate sending strings to translators and make their translation experience much better. I have jedtoolkit.org that you can visit. There's a picture of him. We can click on that, and then I'll be done. But I'd love to talk. Oh, he's down there. There he is. So I'd love to talk about how that web app works with a bunch of people. I've been working with some of the major translation companies on getting them to be able to use these apps as their translations kind of spot, because they're still using tools from like the 70s and Word documents and things like that and FTP file uploads. It's a terrible, terrible world. It's like 20 years behind every other place we are. So we can really, really bring the tooling for internationalization up to par with the tooling that we have for automated builds and testing and all that kind of stuff, and we'll be in a lot better place. I probably don't have time for questions, I'd guess. Maybe one? All right.
One question? Do you handle any RTL stuff?
RTL, I've been saving. The thing with RTL, and I had to do one RTL app, is that so far as I can tell, there's no solution to RTL other than look at everything individually, all by itself, with someone who speaks those languages 100 times. Like, if someone can create something that's awesome for that, I will totally help you. But I don't have that idea yet. RTL is very difficult. It's really just like really pay attention to everything and build new code paths. Luckily, there's no one's going to introduce a new direction in the next like 20 years to read code, so or read words. So really, yeah, just have to deal with the 3 that exist, and hopefully only 2, really, in the real world.
Good?
Good?
Okay.
I'm happy to show anyone the tool, the translation tool, if you want to. It's probably not a good time up here. So, thanks.
Yeah, it looks really good. So thank you, Alex.